It's November 20th, 2024. Going backwards. We'll get there. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dana. Hope you're having a great day. You can call into these live shows, live presentations, really, at 709-589-4406. What does Conference of Parties 29 and the G20 have in common? They're the cover story for the Fukushima radioactive fallout induced extinction level event. And they're very powerful. They've hoodwinked the entire planet. It's been a minute, so give me a minute to get up to speed. Is the Fukushima radioactive fallout behind the mass extinction level event in the world health crisis? The evidence is overwhelming. Hello. Hi. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Dana.
Just calm down, Charlie. That's a stalker we got from Japan. Has been stalking us for 11 years. And they're the people that are claiming that the media is on top of Reactor 4 in order to hide the actual extinction level event that is playing out. This is a model based on France's of cesium-137 after Fukushima. This model is based on 16 days of radioactive fallout. It's at 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium per cubic meter of air. Why thousands are gathered around a russet dead whale by the world's biggest lake. So this is United Nations Conference of Parties 29. And this is an art exhibition they put there in order to blame the die-offs now, because this is one of the world's biggest freshwater lakes. Clearly, now we've seen a lot of emaciated whales showing up in rivers and lakes over the last number of years. No sperm whales live in the vast body of water. It's an art installation meant to hoodwink. And of course, this got incredible media. And so this it's kind of outrageous. You got people interfering, or doing their damnedest to interfere. Doing their damnedest to interfere. With the show, right? And so let me explain to you what's really been going on with the die-offs of the whales. It's extraordinary numbers we're talking about. But it's all post-Fukushima radioactive fallout. And we'll go to the other screen. Isn't that outrageous? Isn't that outrageous? Isn't that outrageous that they do that to me? Just give me 1 minute. I should get rid of that problem. There have been about 1,200 reports of whales and boats colliding since a worldwide database launched in 2007. So let's move ahead to today, post-Fukushima. There's an extra... That's something, isn't it? Scientists discovered 7,000 humpback whale deaths using artificial intelligence technology. Humpback whales. there's been 10,350 gray whales. So you got 10,000 gray whales, 350, 7,000 humpback whales. There's all the other species. We're seeing the same type of attributes. But in the history of boat collisions and whales, since the worldwide database was launched in 2007, there was only 1,200 reports of whales and boat collision. That doesn't mean they all died, right? So trying to blame the whales on climate change when the attributes we're seeing, the die-offs, and this is an extinction event. This is all species, as I'll show you coming up in a moment. The radioactive fallout was modeled by NOAA. It was dismodeled there. And the model to your left was published by medias worldwide, and they would say that that's Fukushima radioactive fallout. That was NOAA's model, and this was NOAA's model. Now, Fukushima really happened. Fukushima is a real event. It's much worse than Chernobyl. And Chernobyl was brutal, as you know. They closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom because of Chernobyl. And the majority of them have been opened again, but there's still 400 closed today, 37 years later. So why would you close 9,400 farms 3,000 kilometers away from a nuclear meltdown? Which meant that all of Europe was heavily contaminated. And we know that's reflected in the academic studies. And you can see some of that in my presentations on Chernobyl, on this year's anniversary and last year's anniversary. I show you around 1,200 academic studies, so you can appreciate how many facets of the biosphere, the ecosystem, that the radiation attacks. Astounding levels of radiation measured in the United States from Fukushima at 500,000 times the normal levels. We've never seen anything even close to that concentrations, and went up day after day after day. It's amazing to see 7,000 kilometers away. It's a matter of life and death. What they mean by that is the radioactive plumes. This was another model. This model is around 35 days. The plume covers the whole planet. All the models seems to be agree upon a 30-day synopsis of the entire planet being engulfed in a permanent invisible snowstorm of radiation. And the problem with this radiation, think of a snowstorm, but instead of snow, think of it as invisible radiation atoms. And think of each atom as pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. Then you're being honest. Then you're getting you're a fraction of the reality of what's really going on. Because you got to take into consideration, you're looking at 80 years of emissions, and it never goes away, bioaccumulates. So every fuel pool in every nuclear reactor site, there's around 1,000 that I can refer to, document. There's no containment. So the fuel is still splitting atoms, and those atoms now are released directly into the biosphere. And almost every nuclear power plant, by the way, is surrounded by farms. So anything that lands close by, the biggest load, is passed off into your supermarkets to cause permanent harm to your children and your friends and your families and your loved ones and your communities and your planet. And the emissions, you're talking about full body x-rays for every species on the planet, sustained now for a very long time. But Japan, this is Japan, was a pulse event. And a pulse event is where you release the enormous, unprecedented amount in a single event. So I've done research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. And I've done that for 6 years. And the reason we've done it for 6 years is because on the first year it went up, there was nothing there. The species to your left were missing. And the species to your left is that's the nursery, that coastline of the Pacific Ocean. There's 27,000 islands in British Columbia. So I was up there for 6 years, and the reason I went back each year was to see if the species came back, and they didn't. Which meant the soup of life. And so a glass of ocean water would typically have 1 billion creatures in it, and 75 million to 100 million of them were the phytoplankton, the bases of the food chain, the bases of the oxygen chain, the bases of the carbon sequestering chain. And then the repercussions from sterilizing the ocean, the Pacific Ocean is turning into a desert off California. So it wasn't just Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. It can't just be that part of the ocean. It was symmetrical. Not only for the Pacific Ocean, it's now all oceans. Babies found severely emaciated. This was the norm on the research if you found anything. The species to your left didn't come back after 6 years of going back repeatedly. And you can see why Japan just phoned me over and over and over and over at the beginning of the show. And because they don't want you seeing this, they want you to get caught up in controversies and drama and everything else rather than in facts. And what I present is only facts. I don't deal in anything but facts. And I go through a lot of work to bring you the documentation, including 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean, doing species counts. And I was considered one of the worst people on the planet and has been ostracized from all medias, institutions, and the public view now for many, many years. But I realized that the world deserves the truth, and so I'm persistent in coming back and telling these stories and documenting these events, and also challenging the nuclear industry's horrific fake narratives. Marine mammals all along the California coast infested with parasites, extremely emaciated. And so we were with thousands and thousands of stories like this, and we launched research expeditions to document the coast. And to my utter horror, now I was a commercial diver. I dove this coastline for many, many years, and the Atlantic Ocean for many, many years. So I was very familiar with the species to your left. That was normal at low tide to see that. And the British Columbia has an extraordinary tide exchange. And I ran some of the biggest fleets on that coastline. So I'm not naive. And there's no one going to tell me the species didn't exist, which is what they're doing to the population. They're saying, no, it always looked like that. It never looked like that. Well, that's not true. And so when you look at the species, look at the radioactive fallout in California, for instance, 40 million atoms of just iodine-131. For every iodine-131, there's 10 times more iodine-132, 30 times more iodine-133, 31 times more iodine-129, which means you're talking about something that doesn't go away for 150 million years. There's a 50 million year half-life, the iodine-129. And it's enough to saturate the thyroid glands of all the species. Insects, birds, mammals, animals, everything. Permanently, right? And that means they're producing radioactive hormones on top of that for the rest of their life, which also means when you're talking about these types of numbers and we're just acknowledging a single isotope. By the way, the 132 iodine, 133 iodine are 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of all the species in humans than incredibly effective 131 is. And that the iodine-129 combinations, now we got studies on everything, plutonium, americium, strontium. We got studies shown, documented, the fallout of many different isotopes. And so if you got one, then you're going to have similar other very harmful for very long periods of time. Many of them will be long past the human experience, will still be here trying to destroy any species. So the 129, all these other isotopes, means that the insects, birds, mammals, animals, humans are also producing radioactive, not just radioactive hormones for the rest of their lives, but radioactive stem cells. And so this is why you see the species disappear pre-Fukushima in such a prominent, pronounced way. It's very easy to look at the post-Fukushima die-offs and say, well, this is not a pre-Fukushima normality. This is extraordinary. It's an event. It's not just an event, it's an extinction level event. And you can see the censorship on my site. 6 viewers, 5 likes. You got nothing to hide, why are you hiding me? And so the species to your left, you'll never take those pictures again. They're gone. I went back for 5 more years, extra years, and the species didn't recover. So trying to blame global warming per se on tin cans, pop bottles, and cardboard seems good when they're spinning it, but when you look at it realistically, it's completely dishonest and disingenuous. A very high concentrations of plutonium, hot particles, americium plutonium, and I got plutonium americium models from TEPCO's numbers actually showing you the plumes covering the planet. This is a neptunium-239 dispersal. And what you're looking at is a plume model of neptunium-239, which decays to plutonium, by the way, covering the whole planet in 20 days. The top model to your left up there is 20 days. There's a similar model, though, for the plutonium-239, and that similarly covers the entire planet. That model is based on the 31st of March, 2011. And Fukushima happened on 2011, March the 11th. So this is 20-day model again. So the prevailing winds blow it across the Pacific Ocean to North America originally. Now this circles the whole planet. And so this is symmetrical now throughout the entire biosphere. And it's permanent. We'll never get rid of this. Because there's so much for so long, and Fukushima was a pulse event. So the species to your left are exterminated. That's not a conjecture. It's not an opinion. That's not a fact. Pretending it's not happening is you're being completely dishonest with yourselves. You're leaving the best part of the equation out and trying to come up with a solution. That's not how it should work, right? Radioactive xenon-133 in Washington was 450,000 times above detection levels after Fukushima, and it persisted for weeks. The xenon-133 model, I do believe it's this model coming up. Yeah, this is a xenon-133. The top left-hand one is based on 20 days. But the majority, except there's a very rare one that doesn't acknowledge the entire planet covered in about 30 days. Like covered. Like this is 19.5 days, 468 hours. That's cesium-137. France's model was 10 million atoms of cesium-137. My apologies. So the research expeditions we done was very difficult times, very stunning, frightening. To go up and see the species are completely eradicated. And so in the tidal zones of the Pacific Ocean, there was, say, 78 species of starfish. Each species came in multiple vibrant colors. And I can show you something I'm very familiar with is being in that environment where there was nowhere to touch down on the ground because you'd be stepping on species. That was normal. This is not normal. The tidal zones were normally incredibly vibrant colors. So there was 78 species of starfish. They came in multiple vibrant colors. You can see mussels, the blue mussels in the background. There was all kinds of shellfish. There was scallops, abalones, multiple species of them. There was snails, mollusk. There was clams. There was the big neck, the little neck, the razorback clams, the manila clams, of course, the scallops, the abalones, etc., the oysters. And then the snails, wasn't unusual to see rocks covered with each rock covered with a million snails, small scale snails. There was just an incredible diversity. Right, and the snails you can see are just one of the many different variations. There was around 84 species of sponges, around similar numbers for coral. There was 482 species of worms you would find in the salt water, especially in the tidal zones. It was 700 algae. And in those 700 algae, kelps, there was 5,500 recognized, named invertebrates without the backbones, like little shrimps. There was, and this was a nursery, so the migratory birds were able to go into the tidal zones and feast. Right? There was just this incredible. Billions of pieces of Fukushima nuclear fuel have spread. Nuclear fuel, which means it's splitting atoms. It's truly frightening. Where there's cesium, there's plutonium. And so Canada, United States, Mexico, the whole planet, but the North American continent, according to the French studies of 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air, meant you were getting similar numbers of plutonium. And this is why you're seeing this explosion of Alzheimer's and dementia and autism and diabetes and Down syndrome and schizophrenia. That's why you're seeing an explosion of heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. And there was a study come out recently that linked cesium to diabetes. And that the cancer epidemic started in 1970s after the nuclear testing, open air testing. And everything tested on the ground was vented directly into the environment at very high speeds and copious amounts. And every time it rains, it goes into those caverns and washes that radiation into the water tables. And of course, there's a lot of evidence to show that the nuclear industry has attacked water, the fresh water and the salt water worldwide. Because if you get rid of water, then you have no life on this planet, right? If you contaminate the water with anthropogenic man-made radiation, you'll get similar results. It happens in increments over time, so you can claim climate change, but you can't back up the assertion because the significant weather events, the supercell cyclones, the supercell typhoons, the supercell hurricanes, can only be acknowledged post-Fukushima in the extremities that we're seeing, right? And so when you have this radiation, another way to appreciate this is you have radiation covering the entire planet in a very short time, but it's been going on for 70 years pre-Fukushima. Now it's 80 plus years, right? Fukushima was a pulse event. This was the French's model based on 15 days. So you have an invisible snowstorm comes out of Japan, for instance, and in 16 days, the whole planet now is an invisible snowstorm. Just bear with me. And what happens is this radiation is in all your meadows, your forest, it's in your ground. We know how it assimilates into your plants and trees and bushes and floras and faunas. And what happens is as you start to kill, one of the first things you're going to kill is the microscopic animals. The biota that breaks down the foliage and the litter in the forest, for instance. And you're going to see it symmetrical worldwide. And we talked about this a decade ago, of course. how we would see this start to play out. Now we see it much worse than we dreamt, much quicker than we dreamt, I should say. And so most of the planet is water, right? And so the land mass itself, a lot of that will eventually wash down to the coastlines, and in order to get there, it has to go through the estuaries, the streams, the rivers, and everything else. And so, but in the meadows and the forests, you'd have full body X-rays from the gammas, the alphas, the neutrons, and betas. They're pulsing almost at the speed of light. And when they hit each other, they don't mingle. Alphas, gammas, and betas don't mingle. What I mean by that is when the energy, almost at the speed of light, the pulses of energy, people are familiar with the term Becquerel. When they hit each other, they change direction. And that's almost at the speed of light. Two objects almost at the speed of light change energy. So carbon, gas, oil, and coal emissions, which is carbon, which is what we're made of, insects, bushes, trees, animals, the earth. The living organism that is Earth is made of carbon. So if you get rid of carbon, then you look like the moon. And the more carbon, the bigger plants grow, the quicker they grow, the more foliage they produce, the more fruit they produce, right? So when you cover the planet in an invisible snowstorm that is much worse than a snowstorm, and you got this other byproduct known as X-rays, caused by the energy being pulsed every second from each atom. So think of each snowstorm, a snowstorm covering the planet, and each flake of snow actually would pulse energy at the speed of light. And think about the distance this stuff can go. Cesium is recognized as easily pulsing 600 feet every second for 300 years. That's pure energy. Where does that go? And so it kills the biota in the forest, and it doesn't break down the foliage in the litter. So after a few years, now when you see lightning strikes, the foliage didn't break down because the biota is gone, the microscopic world. Now what happens is the ground's not, because you don't have the biota, you don't have the breaking down of foliage and litter, then the ground can't soak up water anymore. The bacteria is gone, the fungus is gone. And all the species are dependent upon those two. So what we figured was going to happen was you're going to get huge runoffs because the ground is not soaking up water. And you can expect to see flash floods showing up in places you wouldn't expect it or never seen it or is unprecedented, to say the least. And at the same time, because the ground, the foliage and the litter hasn't broken down, the forests are tinder dry, the ground is not sucking up water anymore. When you have lightning strikes, you see the big foliage and litter rise up that we've never seen before because it normally broke down and would drift thousands of feet in land. You have a big piece of fire landing, which is not your typical forest fire. And so you would see forest fires would be out of control because the jumping, right, of the fire is something we've never seen before, because normally the ground soaks up so much water, it mitigates that particular facet. That is new to this planet now, right? Because of the nuclear industry. And at the same time, I mean, all the nuclear power plants, fuel pools are splitting atoms. So a nuclear reactor core is producing power for 1 million homes and businesses. After 14 months, you're taking a chunk of that out and putting in a fuel pool on top of these buildings, for instance, for the boiling water reactors. It's still splitting the same atoms it was to boil water for 1 million homes and businesses. And where are they going? They're going up that tall, skinny stack on a nuclear site. And so climate change, the supercell storms, the supercell typhoons, the supercell cyclones, we've seen them pre-Fukushima. We basically seen them as the nuclear, post-nuclear, not post-nuclear industry, but post-nuclear testing. That's the definitive time of records showing these supercell type storms. But after Fukushima, this cycle now has become incredible. Every other storm now is a supercell cyclone, a supercell typhoon, a supercell hurricane. And then trying to blame all of these effects on climate change is a wonderful way to mitigate it. That's what they've done. And that's the big push right now. And now they're claiming nuclear is the solution to the nuclear. which is to be expected, right? You know, it's illegal. It's not illegal to poison you or anything else with radiation. It's not illegal. If it was, and Congress and parliaments don't have the authority to make it illegal, only the nuclear regulatory changed every administration. So every 4 years or something, they appoint new people. So even if the Nuclear Regulatory Agency in Canada or the United States said it was illegal to poison you with radiation, the next administration would withdraw that, and they would be that your government doesn't have the authority, conveniently doesn't have the authority. Only this corporation known as United Nations basically seems to have the ability to make rules and regulations, and we don't know who these people are. This is a corporation with the same structure as McDonald's. And so why are all these 200 countries, I mean, the best way to describe, like Eisenhower described UN as 195 militaries. They have their own army, their own navy, their own air force. And they're incredibly wealthy. If you give them trillions of dollars a year, they'll be the most wealthiest, wealthiest organization on the planet. And that has a legacy of just incredible harm to everything they touch. The species to your left, and participants don't understand the big picture. It doesn't mean they're evil, right? That's how this system works so well, is the average person doesn't understand the big picture that participates in the UN. But, you know, but many do. Many have got that job to do what they're doing in Pacific, is to push for rules and regulations that are not official, but because the UN doesn't have any sovereignty over any country, but has incredible influence over pretty well every country now worldwide. Hollywood, universities, medias, and they've slowly infiltrated every facet of humanity's existence. I'll show you some of that coming up in a little tiny bit. We're almost there. So these research expeditions that I went on for years, still carrying out when I can, is showing extinction. Now this year we've done 1,100 ponds, never seen a single fish jump. In 1,100 ponds out in the Atlantic Ocean on a beautiful island in the middle of nowhere, far away from any kind of pollution except for radiation. You can't escape the anthropogenic man radiation no matter where you are on the planet. It has now compromised humanity. Well, even without a nuclear accident, the emissions from the fuel pools will eventually exterminate all the species through the bioaccumulation facet. And yeah, it could take 100 years or more that way, but it will happen because this stuff never goes away. And those species will never come back. And after 5 extra years of doing research expeditions, we can quantify that because we've done the entire coastline and also the Atlantic. And NOAA's model of the radioactive emissions into the ocean, same as the German model, are based on multiple years. But when you look at the France's model of 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137, for instance, you can't have that without having uranium, plutonium, americium, neptuniums, strontiums, and everything else. Is only 16 days. So it didn't take 6 years, per se. It took 16 days to have this effect. And carbon doesn't have these attributes. Carbon doesn't make plumes that covers this much. Carbon doesn't make plumes that covers this much. Nuclear makes the plumes that are the only anthropogenic man-made pollution that makes plumes that covers the entire planet. But the adverse effect of them, there's nothing on the planet with an autoimmune trigger to defend against anthropogenic man-made radioactive fallout. So it attacks everything with replicating cells. And doctors in the 50s and 60s described the radiation fallout as a biological weapon. So an explosion of sea lion deaths in Peru and deadly bird flu outbreak So they were trying to blame the die-off of thousands of sea lions on a bird flu. But the bird flu allegedly, after millions of generations, it had never jumped to a human or any other species. So why would it do it now? Well, it could theoretically do it because your immune systems are compromised because of radiation. So theoretically, it could happen. But what's more likely is the food chain is broken because bird flu would decimate the animals, they say, in a matter of days. We've covered this for many, many years. What you're looking at, the sea lions there are emaciated. And this takes a very long time. This doesn't happen over 6 days. They've lost around 80% of their body weight. And so it's very interesting. They would show you those pictures. And when they show you the other pictures, again, they're showing you unbelievable emaciated sea lion. A sea lion is usually 12 to 100 pounds to 2,000 pounds is not unusual. Is pretty normal, right? The males are the biggest. But I've never seen anything like that. All my years as a commercial diver and as a fisherman, as a younger man, I've never seen anything like that. Never heard telestories like that. And I dove, all the commercial divers that I work with, I have over 10,000 hours under the ocean. But when you look at the accumulation of everybody that I work with their thousands of hours also, I would have heard these stories. Nobody has ever seen that pre-Fukushima. 6 more countries joined the goal to triple nuclear. U.S. sets of deployment plans. 6 more countries joined the goals to triple nuclear. But nuclear is the problem, as I just showed you over and over and over and over. Nuclear is the problem. A total of 31 nations. Just because the nations didn't have a referendum and say, okay, we endorse nuclear. This was a handful of politicians. And then the media comes out and says the nations are not behind it. This is just less than 5-6 people in administration. And the media comes out and portrays it as the whole country is marching down the street, give us more nuclear, when that's simply not true, right? And you wouldn't support nuclear if you understood the very foundation of what nuclear does to everything with replicating cells. Hi everybody, hugs for everybody. Hope you're all having a great day. It's great to be back here. I've been really sick. I hurt myself really bad. And I'm sitting back and watching all the media play out, and I can't just sit there in silence. I had to come out and put out a little video. I'm doing much better. The hand, probably take the band-aids off the weekend. And I really hurt myself when I fell. My back got hurt really bad, so I'm doing much better. I haven't done anything. I literally haven't done nothing in 8 days. Just try to recover. And we're going to be back tomorrow night on the regular schedule, get a show in, hopefully. Brazil urges G20 leaders move faster on climate, net zero climate, which is a paper by it's pretty bad when I can't remember the names of the people who wrote the papers. That's just my problem. It was just a guy who wrote a paper, got a job at Cambridge as an adjunct professor. The United Nations took that paper and weaponized it against humanity. G20 not ready to decide on taxing the super rich. They wrap up talks on climate change and tax on billionaires. This is how they're going to get their hands on the money. They're just going to tax all of you. So imagine an organization. I create an organization, and then I convince politicians in a couple of 100 countries to enact a law where you tax everybody, private bank accounts and everything else, so that your corporation gets that money under the the auspice of climate change. When climate change, and promoted nuclear as a solution when nuclear is what caused the problem. Right? Because that's what we're talking about. And Fukushima was the catalyst. Was the straw that broke humanity and the 8 million species back. Because Fukushima was a massive pulse event. Women's voices are crucial to the climate debate. Leaders accuse France of colonial crimes. I mean, what France done to the French Polynesian with radioactive fallout was equal to a Nagasaki bomb a week for 12 years. And even 11 administrations later, they still refuse to acknowledge that there was any adverse side effects. And so crimes, that's all France really seems to be good at. Argentina withdraws negotiators from Conference Parties 29 Summit, the Constipated Party Summit, because of Trump. Because Trump allegedly is going to walk away. So Argentina don't see any sense in wasting their time. International, just bear with me here and bring that up to the other screen. I can't see what's missing there. UN Trade and Development. Yeah, they got a corporation for everything. The UN does, including UNICEF. Why would this one corporation have hundreds of subsidies that target every facet of your life, no matter where you're to on the planet? And now wants $1 trillion plus, $1.3 trillion, is it a year? Do you want? You to give them, put all your faith in them. They've never came through before. They have no sovereignty over any country. And they have all kinds of universities. There's like 50,000 people down there. Do you ever go to a city with 50,000 people? What's their so-called carbon footprint? The carbon footprint, of course, was created by BP Oil, a public relation push to blame you for their oil spills into the pristine coastlines. And then the United Nations seized that and then weaponized that against humanity. World Health Organization demand urgent integration of health in the climate negotiations. So World Health Organization, and this is the theme of UN. They got the world trades. They're influencing every facet of life in every country, but they're not elected, they're not appointed. They're a corporation, and they're not a non-profit corporation. They're a globalist entity that wants to blame everything on you that is created by the nuclear industry. So why did they pretend that they got the fuel of the reactor for? And why do I have a picture showing all these dead whales with radiation signs on them and people in paper suits for some reason called radiation protective suits? It's an interesting question. And I explained that right through the video. And if you're just joining us, you should go back and watch the start of the video, and that'll get you up to speed on what's really going on. And these research expeditions are still ongoing. We're on the Atlantic Ocean, and we're seeing no spiders in the forest, for instance, no fish jumping in lakes, no migratory birds on the coastline. And the ones that show up that dead are emaciated. I hope you all had a great day. I'll see everybody tomorrow night. We'll try to get back on normal schedule and slowly work our way back up. And remember what they get done to the Great Lakes, right? It's completely covered by nuclear dumps, nuclear processing facilities, nuclear power plants. The third biggest body of fresh water on the entire planet. They are 100% unequivocally attacking the water on our planet. And without water, there is no life. And remember, do not censor me because I'm full of nonsense. They censor me because when you watch these videos, you realize there's another narrative that you didn't hear about and that you needed to hear about. Is Fukushima radioactive fallout beyond the mass extinction level event and the world health crisis? there's after Japan, within the first year, there's many things that happen, but think about this one before we call it a day. There's 865,000 extra cancers in Japan in the first year after Fukushima. Not everybody got health care, not everybody was diagnosed, and cancer is not the only adverse side effect. Heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. And it just came out that obesity rates in the United States, well, in Japan, they doubled in the first year, which is a sign of radioactive brain damage, by the way. That's what they said the reason was. In the United States, right across the Pacific from Japan, where the prevailing winds blow and where the typical anthropogenic man-made pollution would add to the pollution indexes for many months, which means the radiation can accumulate too, is now saying there's 3/4 of the population of America is obese. 3/4 of the population has radioactive brain damage in the United States. And it manifested, one of the ways is obesity. Another way is Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, Down syndrome, diabetes, heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid. Yep, incredible censorship tonight. 10 people on my show today, I should say. We're doing an early show today. We'll see everybody on the next show. Have a great day. And we're going to do a show at a regular time tomorrow night. And so this is trying to just get my foot back out there and get started. We got a great show ready to go tomorrow night on Fukushima. I hope you'll join us. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.